Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. I was just giving it a moment to make sure everybody filtered in. I sent out a reminder a few minutes before we started. So I just wanted to sort of make sure that everybody was here. And I also did the good old Zoom jiggle where I kind of, had to put the windows in the right spot, which was good because it reminded me that my camera was over here. Otherwise, I would have been looking over here. So that worked well. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first Technology Enhanced Learning Community of Practice meeting for 2023. Yay, very, very exciting. And we are going to have a great guest speaker today. So Ritesh Chugh is going to come and talk to us a little bit about ChatGPT, which you may have heard of. A few people have been talking about ChatGPT over the last 2 months or so, 3 months. And so Ritesh sort of approached us and said, hey, I want to talk about ChatGPT. And we said, well, yeah, that would be awesome if you could do that for CQUniversity staff. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about it. And I suspect, based on his title, that it's going to be sort of a positive talk about how we might use ChatGPT, as opposed to the alternative, which is where we all sort of get a little bit concerned that it might be used by our students for cheating. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm going to do what I usually do and just going to give you a couple of minutes of sort of reminders of what the TELCoP is and those kinds of things. And then I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll hand over to Ritesh and he can take you through. I think he's got a little bit of a presentation and then we'll probably also do what we usually do where we'll take questions in the chat and Robert and I can moderate some of those questions on your behalf if we need to. But I'll mention that just before Ritesh launches off. So hopefully you can see my slides, which is the Technology Enhanced Learning Community of Practice. So it occurs to me that maybe the window's in the way. So there we go. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully you can see the TELCoP slides there. And as I said to you, this is the meeting for the 9th of March and our guest speaker is Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh from CQUniversity, and I am Michael Cowling, and this TELCoP is also run by Robert Vanderburg and also by Daryl Clare as well. As you can see our names down there on the bottom right hand side. So I'm going to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on. And as I always say at CQU, this is a pretty wide berth, right? From Adelaide to Melbourne to Brisbane to Rockhampton to Cairns to Townsville. But myself, I'm actually here at UNSW. This week and also next week, I'm doing a teaching fellowship here. And so because of that, the traditional owners of the land that I'm meeting you on is slightly different, but I did Google it and they are the Bedegal people for this campus here, the Kensington campus. And as you would probably know, if I was in the city, it would be the Gadigal people because we also have a campus in Sydney, as you probably know. So I'd like to acknowledge all of those people, the traditional custodians of all the lands on which we're meeting, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and also emerging. So this is the community that you're in. This is the Technology Enhanced Learning Community of Practice. And just to get us started at the beginning of the year, this is the details about the TELCoP. It is a merger of two COPs, the Education Tech COP and the Virtual Augmented and Mixed Reality COP from a few years ago. We've been one COP now for a while, so I don't put that on the slides anymore. I'm also not going to read the slides. You can have a look at what's written there yourself, the aims of the COP, but it is predominantly about sharing that best practice and connecting with everybody as teachers and as scholars to understand how technology enhanced learning can improve what we do at CQUniversity. Interestingly, here at UNSW, I went to a COP yesterday, a UNSW COP, which is for their education focused staff about digital student feedback and digital assessment. So a little more specific than our COP, but I love the fact that it doesn't matter where you are, they've always got communities of practice. And so this is our COP for CQU. And I mentioned myself already. That's an old photo. I need a new photo. This is me, just in case you don't know who I am. I'm an associate professor here. Various different accolades there on the slide, including being Professor Tech, which I usually have sitting around me on a pillow or on a sign. But because I'm in an unusual location, I can't point to Professor Tech for you. And then the other person that's here is Robert Vanderburg. Is Robert here? Oh, he is here. There we go. I'll make him a co-host. Make him feel special. So, and he is the COP champion, and he will be helping to moderate all of the things that you write in the chat and ask Ritesh some questions during the Q&A portion. But of course, if you want to, I'll leave Ritesh to decide if he wants you to interrupt him midstream, or whether he might even be so technology great that he can read them as he goes along. But otherwise, we will help to moderate those. So there's a little bit of detail there on the slides about Robert and who he is. He's in the School of Education, senior lecturer there, and I always say an avid fitness nut and a massive fan of Bundaberg rum, and not just because he lives in Bundaberg, but the less I say about that, the better. So that's us, but the man you're here to see is this man here, Ritesh Chugh, who is from CQUniversity, worked here, I think, almost as long as I have, maybe longer, I'm not sure. We'll have to compare. And he is an associate professor now, and works predominantly in the area of information systems, technological approaches to information systems, and just like Robert and I, has received several awards, including the Best Practice in International Education Award from the IEAA, which was just at the end of last year, as well as getting the Dean's Award for Outstanding Researcher in the mid-career category, which I thought was pretty impressive, given that Ritesh is a teaching scholar. So he got an award for research. And I said that to him at the time. It was very exciting. He's also really involved in the media and public scholarship. And so if you don't see Ritesh around campus, there is a chance that you will hear him on the radio or see him on the TV or writing an article for one of various media publications. I guess in line with this idea of how IT connects to society, heady on the society. And so, as I said to you, Ritesh is going to talk to us a little bit today about ChatGPT, and I think he called it chatting up a storm. But this is usually the point where, just before I hand over to Ritesh, I show some silly photos of that person that I found somewhere that show them doing something different. Now, here's the problem. Ritesh is really good at making sure that there are not so many silly photos of Ritesh out there on the internet. So I actually had a bit of a hard time. I'm sure I remember at some point seeing him tweeting him wearing a jacket similar to what he's wearing right now, and then a pair of sweatpants on the bottom during COVID. He's nodding his head, right? But I couldn't find that photo. He may have deleted that tweet at some point. So instead, the best I could come up with is a couple of photos from his previous exploits. I love this one. This is Ritesh, clearly Ritesh in his younger days before he decided that the beard was the way to go. And then this one here, he doesn't look particularly happy in this photo. I think he's being Zoom bombed at the time. But yeah, I did struggle, Ritesh, to find those photos, which is probably a good thing. It means that you've done well at cleansing your social media. But anyway, that's it for me. I told you it was a quick presentation. So what I'll do now is I will stop the sharing, and I will hand over to Ritesh, who, without further ado, is going to tell us a little bit about ChatGPT. And I'm going to put myself on mute so I don't interrupt you, Ritesh, but go for it.
No. Thank you, Michael.
We can't hear you. We didn't test it beforehand.
You can't hear me?
Oh, you can hear him?
Yeah.
Oh, it's me. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I can hear him as well, Michael. It's you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Michael, for that introduction, and thanks, Robert and Michael, for inviting me to this TELCoP. My photo with those shorts and jacket during COVID is still on Twitter, but like you said, it's always good to be mindful of what you're placing on the internet, because you never know how things could be used. So I'm glad that you didn't find anything that would have been of concern to me. Now, before I begin, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. ChatGPT is an exciting topic, and looking at the number of participants, I think I might ask Michael a question first. Michael, is that the usual attendance you have, or?
I want to say that you may be the second highest we've ever had, and if you get a few more, Ritesh, you might break the record. So you're doing pretty well.
Good. Maybe another email to some other mailing list.
Yeah.
But no, that's good. Look, as I begin my presentation, I'm happy to take questions as I go along. I don't want to leave questions to the end because sometimes, we have these burning things in our head and we want a response. So please feel free. I will be monitoring the chat screen. Thank you, Robert, for monitoring as well. But let me share a presentation. I just wanted a bit of a visual than me just talking, or because the initial plan was Mike was going to ask me some interview type questions, but then I said, nah, it's good to have that visual, a visual presentation as well. So let me just share my screen. So if you could just give me a thumbs up if you're able to see the screen. Awesome, good. So chatting up a storm, understanding and leveraging the power of ChatGPT. On the left side of the screen, you see an image, and that was also generated using artificial intelligence. So I generated that using DALL-E, and the text prompt that I gave DALL-E was a photo of a generative artificial intelligence tool that focuses on understanding and leveraging its power. So that's what DALL-E gave me. For people who haven't used DALL-E, DALL-E is an artificial intelligence powered image generator. So Michael, if you could perhaps just pop the link of DALL-E in the chat for people who've not used it, and just so people can experience it in their own time as well. Being involved in the area of social technology research, I'm also quite visible. And that's why you will see me on different social media platforms. For those of you who are on Twitter, I'd request you to post about this presentation if you'd like. My Twitter handle is @CHUGH_Ritesh. Michael, if you could post both your Twitter handle, my Twitter handle in the chat screen so we could have some conversation going, it'll be awesome. So the structure that I've adopted for today's conversation is I'll just give a brief background about ChatGPT, its rise to fame, and I'd say a phenomenal rise to fame, because everyone's just talking about ChatGPT. I'll talk about the power of ChatGPT and what we can do with it, what's happening in the field, the benefits, challenges, limitations. Then I've also got some ideas about what we should be doing as educators and some use cases. And at some stage, I will provide a quick demo of ChatGPT as well, and just end with some concluding thoughts. Now, this might sound like a silly question, but please don't be shy in typing in the chat screen whether you've used ChatGPT or not, because I have often come across people who still haven't used ChatGPT. So perhaps just a yes or no, Y or N, because trust me, don't be shy about it. It is time that we start thinking about how to embrace it. And I can see the icons popping up. I see quite a lot of no's, and I hope to be able to convert you by the end of today's session, because I will talk about the limitations, but nevertheless, I think our focus is on how we should be using it. Ashley says he's been using it daily, which is good. I see quite a few yeses. So Katrina says, yes, only a play. So most people have tried it, but I think we need to try it with a purpose in mind now of what we want to achieve from ChatGPT. So firstly, for people who don't know, ChatGPT is publicly available and it's a free to use chatbot. So, often people, when they hear of artificial intelligence or any other artificial intelligence platform, such as Grammarly, a lot of us don't use it because there's a cost attached to it. ChatGPT is free. It is an example of generative artificial intelligence because it creates something new that has not existed before. It rehashes content. So what does GPT stand for? G is for generative, which is it predicts words based on its large language model that it's trained on. P is for pre-trained. It's trained on large amounts of data, and it has a transformer in the end, which is based on an encoder-decoder model, which basically means it turns a message into a secret code that then turns the secret code back into the message, which is your encoder and decoder. So basically, it's like having a secret language that only you or your friend can understand. Because ultimately, the content that we get to see is the decoded message. In terms of its rise to fame, in fact, before I go to that slide, there's one thing that I'd like to mention, especially for the technophiles in this room. The CEO of the company behind ChatGPT, Sam Altman, so the company is called OpenAI. He reported in a tweet that each individual chat currently costs single-digit cents to run. So, well, then we had people trying to calculate how much would that work out in terms of daily money that the company is actually spending. So this AI professor in the United States estimated that the daily cost of running ChatGPT to be approximately $100,000. And this was in the initial days, you know, when it had a couple of million users. Now we're talking millions, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. And the monthly cost to be about 3 million. So this was an estimation that was in January, and we're in March now, when the number of users has gone up phenomenally. So the rise to fame. If you look at this chart here, Netflix took 3.5 years to reach 1 million users. Facebook took 10 months to reach 1 million users. ChatGPT took 5 days. That, I think, itself speaks for how quickly people adopted. So it's the fastest service platform to reach 1 million users. In fact, as of January, it had 100 million active users, which speaks for its rise to fame. What are people using it for? So the power of ChatGPT essentially lies in its data set, which is 175 billion parameters, which include books, newspapers, research papers, and a snapshot of the internet from till 2021. So the data that ChatGPT has currently is only data, so it's only been trained on data till 2021, which means that it cannot comment about current happenings, which is a drawback. But then there is talk already of a new version coming out in April, which will be trained apparently on thrice the number of these parameters, and obviously it'll have more power. We yet don't know whether it'll have current data or not, but we'll see what happens. So the chatbot produces human-like text, and it can be used to write stories. It can be used for poems, programming code, solving math questions, and translating. In fact, in the initial days, I think most people were just trying to have fun with it. Over the last couple of months, we have now realized how it can be used to make us all more productive. Whether that is for writing emails, Ashley said he's used DALL-E to conjure a card for his granddaughter. So there's different uses of artificial intelligence. And obviously, it can be used for learning and teaching and research. What's happening in the education landscape? Many schools and universities globally have banned ChatGPT. If you ask me, I think that's a knee-jerk panic reaction, because for me, the question really we should be asking is, should we adapt to ChatGPT or resist it? So that's why, I think it's really a knee-jerk panic reaction when schools and universities have started to ban. In fact, I recall when the New South Wales Department of Education banned ChatGPT, their deputy secretary said that they've made the decision to ban ChatGPT because the terms of usage of ChatGPT require that users be 18 years old or over. So that was the reason they gave. But then, slowly what happened was other states followed suit. Initially, we had the Victorian Premier saying, now we'll allow ChatGPT. Now Victoria's also, public schools have banned ChatGPT in Victoria, Queensland as well. And obviously, there are, I understand when you think of children, there are concerns around reliable safeguards because it is possible that students could be exposed, or young children especially, could be exposed to potentially explicit and harmful content. Personally, I disagree with these bans because, and I'm sure you've heard in the news that Bing has already released a beta version where they've incorporated ChatGPT. So Bing as a search engine, if they are integrating into their search engine, then schools and universities are not going to start banning search engines. And Bing's not the only one, because Google's also not far behind. In China also, we are hearing Baidu come up with their own language learning model. Interestingly, public schools are banning ChatGPT, but private schools are not. So what happens to those terms of use that I mentioned, being concerned about 18 years or over? I think it's important for the user of ChatGPT to make that decision. It's like any other social media platform where the user decides. The concerns about academic misconduct. So that's probably what also prompted those bans, because educators are saying that it promotes cheating. But contract cheating and ghostwriting has existed for a while now. So why those concerns? In fact, I was talking to someone the other day, and that person said it's possible that ghostwriters will now start to use ChatGPT to curate their content. So then why do we have to prohibit students from using it? Because education is about developing critical, social, analytical, lifelong skills, and obviously these digital skills, because using ChatGPT also demands those digital skills, particularly in terms of the prompts that we use to generate content. As far as CQUniversity is concerned, in February, CQUniversity also updated their academic integrity policy, and the use of machine-generated text or artificial intelligence software is now classified as contract cheating in our policies as well. So it's included in our policy. But it stipulates that the use of artificial intelligence software classifies as contract cheating. However, if students the policy doesn't say that if students are using it and they've acknowledged it, is it acceptable? Because personally, there's a lot of talk, and a lot of research publishers are saying, well, if you are using ChatGPT, you have to acknowledge it. Whereas other publishers have now said no. And I might just touch on that because I wasn't going to focus on the research aspect. I've already done a presentation around that. In fact, Mike and I were together in that presentation where we talked about the research aspect or usage of ChatGPT. Robert has raised his hand. Yes, Robert, please.
I was going to say to share an idea as you go forward of maybe not paralleling ghost instructors with ChatGPT, because as somebody put in the chat, right? We don't allow ghostwriting as a form of instruction, right? And we also can't intervene to use ghostwriters as a form of instruction, but we can use ChatGPT as a form of instruction. So you might want to separate those two, because yes, while ghostwriting has been happening a long time, you really can't ghostwrite and use that to teach a student, right? Because it just comes in. But ChatGPT can be used as an instructive process, separating the two in a way.
Yep, thanks. Robert, thank you. I'm just looking at Rachel's comment, and I think you've answered that Rachel, look, we're not endorsing cheating in any shape or form. That's the reason the university acted rather quickly in terms of improving our policy, and we clarify that with our students. In fact, when we are going to be using in the future, and some of us have already started doing it, we started using ChatGPT in our classrooms to engage in discussion, to create generative content. I don't think that is cheating. Alan says, what are the chances of the data set that feed the AI engines being doped, hacked with incorrect? Yes, Alan, ultimately it's a learning model. So that possibility is always there. And Michael says, how about if instead of ghostwriters, we talk about exemplars? Yep, I'm going to talk about exemplars. Robert's got his hand up. Yes, Robert?
When you go to the ChatGPT site, the limitations state may occasionally generate incorrect information.
Yep, it does it a lot of times. No, it does it a lot.
Produce harmful instructions or biased content.
Yep.
And it says link to the knowledge source. So he's right. It does produce. It even tells you it will. So it's just a given argument, not even an if, but does, will.
It does. However, I have noticed that over the last 3 months, it started to weed out harmful content. In the initial days, because I was playing around with it, I put words that I wanted to see whether it's giving content. It was initially, now it's stopped giving. So content related to religion, or hateful content, it has started to weed it out. But I think you're right there, Alan, in terms of the learning.
Well, the more specific you put stuff in, the less chance they've seen it, the more chance they're going to put a falsified piece of fact. So I've done it with articles that are in my classes, and they just say incorrect things about the articles because it's not in there, and they have to generate something because it's not trying to generate a good thing. It's just trying to generate something. So the more specific you make it, the more there are going to be errors opposed to a general topic. True,
very true. So universities or educational providers have now started shifting to traditional assessment types, such as pen and paper exams. I think that was a reaction that we saw from some Go8 universities also. Obviously, a transition to presentations in Vivas and updating academic integrity policies, which we've touched upon. So we need to see ChatGPT as an opportunity rather than a hindrance. Now, in terms of the benefits, improved efficiency and time saving, there's so many things you can do. Even if you need to draft emails, you can quickly prompt it and say, well, can you give me an email? And it'll draft an email. So, and in terms of, I'm going to be talking about lesson plans in a few minutes. So it saves time, generates responses really quickly, assistance with diverse tasks, even whether it's with regards to programming. It can easily and quickly develop code. So diverse tasks, and people have already, like I said at the start, it's useful for story writing, it's useful for essay writing. Unlimited follow-ups till the user is satisfied with the response. You can keep regenerating your responses till you are satisfied. And there's no point pressing that regenerate button repeatedly. You should actually learn to improve the prompt. So I'll talk about prompts also. It also remembers previous interactions, which means you can go back and click on one of your previous interaction and continue the conversation. However, in the last 24 hours, I've noticed, I think there's some maintenance work happening on ChatGPT. Those previous interactions are not appearing. Robert, are you able to see them on the left-hand side of the screen? They weren't available when I checked this morning.
I can see what's written on the left hand. You mean unlimited follow-ups?
No, when you engage with it, it shows you your conversations that you've had.
Yes, on the left, it does.
It does. Okay, I wasn't able to see them this morning, so it said to me it wasn't working.
I was going to add to this benefit.
Sure.
Another thing that it's commonly being used for is you can put in your own text and then say, make this more relatable for children. You can put the text and you can say, make this more simple. You can put in a text and say, make this more complex. So like it really enables you to reach a different audience with something you've already written. In addition, I think everybody only thinks of ChatGPT as generating opposed to just improving. Because we did one at work where we put it in and we said, do this story for a kid. And he took a complex idea and just turned it into a kid's story.
Yeah. And again, this comes to your prompts. You really have to be specific with your prompt. So for example, you might have, like Robert said, you paste a paragraph in and you say, can you rewrite this so it is easy to explain it to a 10-year-old? So then what it does, it'll simplify the language, and because you're being specific by saying 10-year-old. And the good thing is it declines most inappropriate requests, which goes back to one of the things that was mentioned in the chat. Michael says the previous queries bit has gone for me too. Okay, good, Michael. So I'm not alone. Now, in terms of the limitations, it's unable to understand context beyond text input. So currently it's only text input. However, a couple of weeks ago, Sam Altman was in a podcast or a radio interview somewhere, and he said there are chances that the next version of ChatGPT will be multimodal, which means, you could input text, images, and video as well, and it could rehash it. But look, don't hold me to it. This is what he said. It is possible that we may see that happen in the future. It creates plausible sounding, but incorrect or nonsensical responses. This is exactly picked from OpenAI's website. I mean, this is what the OpenAI is saying, that often you will hear plausible sounding but incorrect or nonsensical responses. I have seen that happen. I've asked it to generate context. It makes up stories of the content. It also plugs in incorrect references, like literally incorrect. Those references do not exist if you Google them up. So if you say, well, write this text for me with citations, it'll generate citations. Because language model, it just picks words based on your prompt. If you go and Google search those papers up, you won't find those papers. So this is where, your students have to be careful and be able to make informed judgments. Harmful instructions or biased content, Robert's already alluded to it. There is a prompt on ChatGPT's website also, which says, you have to be or sometimes it is possible this content may be generated. ChatGPT can be manipulated in the conversation process. Michael might recall that on my LinkedIn, I posted last month 2 + 2. So I asked ChatGPT what 2 + 2 is. It initially said 4. Then I said, no, are you sure? It should be 5. Then ChatGPT said to me, no, I'm sorry, it is 5. So again, this comes back to, 2 + 2 was a very simple example just to illustrate the fact that it is possible to manipulate it. So again, the reader has to still be informed and analytically decide whether to use the content that ChatGPT is generating. I have already mentioned it currently only takes a snapshot of the internet taken in 2021. And the restriction currently is on the number of simultaneous users accessing ChatGPT from the same IP address. So which means if you were in your class and let's say you were in a lab and there were 20 students and you asked all of them to get onto ChatGPT, you won't have much luck. 3 or 4 people will be able to get onto it simultaneously and it'll stall. So that's a problem particularly if you are planning to integrate it into your classrooms. Unless you say to them, all right, well, mobile phones, take your phones out because different IP address, and then use it. So that's a restriction at the moment. Any questions so far? I am monitoring chat screen. Any questions, anyone? Questions, comments, anything? Is it possible to get programming codes according to my text? Yes, absolutely. Yep. In fact, just remind me again when I'm doing a demo, we'll do a demo. We'll do a quick demo. So what are the challenges in all of this? We are concerned about the impact on the learning environment and the student-teacher relationship. because are we necessarily the experts anymore? You ask a question in your class and the student, rather than Googling it up, which they were doing in the past, can now just go to ChatGPT and get a specific answer. Because previously, if they Googled up the response, they still had to filter through all those links and decide and extract the relevant information. So here now ChatGPT will throw the answer at you. And that's where, that relationship of you being the expert becomes a bit of a issue. Questions about the integrity of take-home exams and homework. So, if we still continue to use take-home exams, we really have to think hard about the type of questions that we put into those take-home exams, because students could use ChatGPT to answer those questions. So the questions really have to focus on logical reasoning. Possible academic misconduct, we've already touched on that. Over-reliance on ChatGPT. So this is students' over-reliance on ChatGPT, which could make people lazy. So if you look at my icon there, I was trying to focus on that aspect of procrastination and laziness there, because there's so many things that ChatGPT can easily accomplish for you. And the challenge is acknowledging the use of ChatGPT. So, if you're using it to generate an email, you're using it to generate a piece of code, you're using it to generate a lesson plan, are we going to acknowledge that it was generated using ChatGPT? But then this comes back to the point of, when we're using content from somewhere else, we acknowledge that the content was from somewhere else. So that's a challenge currently, and it raises a lot of ethical questions that I necessarily don't have the answers to, because it's all evolving. And we've already mentioned that ChatGPT and other AI models can perpetuate existing bias in the data sets that they're trained on, which could potentially lead to discriminatory outcomes in the text that it generates. Therefore, it's important for us to thoroughly evaluate the output that that ChatGPT is generating. And bias is an issue in the data sets that it's trained on, because remember, it's gone and taken millions of pages from the internet. Okay, let's see here in the chat screen code. Brian, I'm going to come to that soon. Rachel, what about the impact on language learning, critical thinking, and expression? As an ALC advisor, I see firsthand the link between critical thinking, synthesis, and written expression. ChatGPT shortcuts this process. Okay. Rachel, look, I don't have a direct answer, but I've heard from people that when they use Grammarly, their language and writing skill tends to improve, because they see artificial intelligence making recommendations to them repeatedly, and they learn from the process. It is quite possible that our students may also learn from the output that ChatGPT is generating. Let's put it this way, Rachel. A student generates content that has a lot of grammatical errors. They then go and plug it into ChatGPT and say, can you fix these errors? ChatGPT will obviously fix everything, and then they can decide. In fact, what a lot of educators are doing in their classrooms now is they're getting students to engage in this exercise. They're saying, well, here is content, or generate some content, run it through ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to pick up the errors and also tell you what the errors were and what needs to be done to fix it. So Rachel, I think it might lead to learning. Can ChatGPT generate specific lesson plans? Larry, yes, Larry, yes. I have an example of a lesson plan that I am going to generate, and I'm sure it can generate for students with learning difficulties as well. I haven't used that prompt, but I don't see why it won't be able to do it. I'm thinking, Rachel says, I'm thinking beyond grammatical errors. what happens on a deeper learning level. Rachel, I will use an example to focus on higher order thinking skills when I'm doing my demo of ChatGPT, and we'll work around that soon. So what should educators do? Try out ChatGPT for yourself. Please do try it out. For people who said no, look, please try it out. Check how ChatGPT responds to your assessments. So Mike will remember that in our college, we were running all assessments through ChatGPT. And there's a lot of literature now that says other universities have started doing it too. Because when I was initially doing it, I was a bit reluctant. Because firstly, I was going to train ChatGPT on that data set. But now, many universities, there's guides that have been written saying, well, you plug your assessments into, because if you're not going to do it, your student is anyway going to run it through ChatGPT, or most students. So there's no harm running it through ChatGPT. In fact, in one of my unit, I had to change 2 assessments. So there was this new unit I took this term. There were 2 assessments in it, which ChatGPT generated the right responses in no time. So I went and changed those assessments. Mike talked about this. I think chopping out lower level of Bloom is a big problem. Yes. Yep. And that's why that focus has to go on higher order thinking skills, which Rachel also was alluding to. And I'm going to hopefully show it through that example. And which comes in my next point as well. Rethink assessments and focus on higher order thinking tasks from the Bloom's taxonomy. And I think this is what, Mike, you've mentioned. Such as creating, evaluating, and analyzing. So that's the higher level of Bloom's. Focus on the process, not on the product. There's a lot of people who are saying now with ChatGPT, see how students are using ChatGPT, ask them to document it and explain their use of the ChatGPT and the process they took to reach the product, whichever, whether that's writing a report. Then teach with it, encourage accountability. I mean, we should be talking about ChatGPT with our students and encourage accountable use. Ethical implications, discuss it with your students. Talk to students about its role as a support tool. I mean, I see ChatGPT as an assistant now. So I'm sure our students are also going to use it. So it's important to talk to our students about its role as a support tool. And I'll be very honest with you. When ChatGPT came into existence, the first couple of weeks, I was flabbergasted. I was like, every time I ran a query on ChatGPT, my eyes would literally pop out in no time. But over time, I realized its drawbacks. I realized how to live with it. I realized how I can use it. I realized how my students can use it. So now I think it's just becoming another tool. So now I've gone from that initial surprise reaction to more of an acceptance phase. And we will all get into that mode quite soon. So integrate ChatGPT into the subject design and encourage its use to generate ideas, analyze text, facilitate discussions, and as a writing assistant. And draw on current events. So when I was rewriting my assessments, for example, references, I said, 2021 onwards, which can be problematic but then I went and did a quick Google Scholar search and I saw there were plenty of articles. That's so that because, anything prior, it's only got data till 2021. I hope that through the use of ChatGPT, students could also become more creative and use it as a learning assistant. And like I said, discuss accountability, honesty, integrity, transparency, and the rules of engagement with your students. Then moving on to the next slide. Here, I've just quickly some use cases for students on the left-hand side and some for educators. So what can we do with students? Generate creative prompts because they, in fact, this link, let me see if I can. Michael, are you able to see this link or is still the slide? Are you seeing the website? Awesome. So this slide is learnprompting.org. Introduce it to your students. It gives plenty of instructions on how to generate good prompts for ChatGPT. See, it's got a whole course on prompting, such as summarizing an article, math word problem solving, and obviously the whole technique is called prompt engineering. So how to engineer good prompts and write good instructions. You know, you could create an assessment activity out of it. Let me get back to this slide. Mike, are you able to see the slide now? Thank you. I had some issues with Zoom yesterday, so just confirming. Refine chat. You can ask your students to refine ChatGPT's output on a provided topic. So you give them a topic and then ask them to refine it. Define the parameters based on which you want them to refine it. Also ask them to, in fact, guide them through OpenAI's instructions. So I'll just quickly open this. OpenAI has created a page of instructions as well of creating prompts and prompt design. So that link, platform, OpenAI. In fact, I can pop these in the chat screen if you'd like. That's there. And oh, sorry, I think it's going to you, Mike. Everyone. Yep, both those links are in the chat screen. And once students are generating content through ChatGPT, you can ask them to identify the strength and weakness of the content and reflect on the problems in that content. Like I said earlier, focus on the process. So you can ask them to outline the logical steps that they undertook to produce the work, ask them to reflect. So reflections become important. And then you can introduce class debating on the topic. Vivas I mentioned earlier, and presentations now obviously are becoming more important than before. Students can be asked to develop videos or create conceptual mind maps, and this is what I did in one of my assessments. I've asked them to create a conceptual mind map rather than textual based. So because obviously, even if they're using ChatGPT to generate text, they'll have to understand it, read it, and then develop the mind map to illustrate the concept. Then for educators, for us, we can use it to develop lesson plans. And this goes back, I think it was Larry who had that question, to generate quizzes and marking rubrics also. It can be used to generate exemplars in really no time. It can be used to brainstorm and kickstart discussions. You can seek help for mundane tasks, like I said, for email writing for yourself, enhance your own productivity also. And I think you really need to consider it as your assistant. Now I'm going to go to ChatGPT and I will, let me just, so I'm going to just stop sharing for a moment, because I need to copy my questions that I wrote so I can quickly run them through ChatGPT. Share screen, share. Can you see my ChatGPT screen? Thank you. So let's just, Mike, I picked virtual reality for you. Okay, let me just zoom in a bit. So there you go. For people who don't know how to get to it, just Google ChatGPT. It'll take you to OpenAI's website. Please register, and that's it. After that, it'll bring you to this interface. The prompt here is brainstorm some ideas combining virtual reality and gaming. So you see now it started giving me some ideas. about virtual reality and gaming. I haven't been specific yet. I've just said, let's brainstorm some ideas, because remember, this is my assistant. I'm going to talk to it. And as it does that, I've created my second question, and I'm going to keep prompting on this itself. So it's given me a whole list, and I'm not going to, at the moment, I'm not going to see whether the list is correct or not, because I know what it's generating is pretty much correct at the moment. My next question is, how can these ideas be implemented in real practice? But ChatGPT may not know the response. I could actually ask this to my students also. I could give these ideas to them and say, well, now how are you going to implement these in real practice? Let's see what ChatGPT says. It's going to make up a story, because I know that this is not the response that we're looking for. It started to give me a list of equipment. So it's not important. And this is where, now I know that ChatGPT is not able to answer this to the level that I want, higher order, because this requires higher order thinking. This requires researching. This requires that I've given you some ideas. I want you to investigate how other companies are using it. So that's where, this, Rachel, I think it comes back to your higher order thinking, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. Now I'm saying, input a broad topic into ChatGPT, such as the impact of VR on education. So I'm just saying, what is the impact? Sorry. Oops. It will give me all these benefits. Once all these benefits come, now my next task is to move to higher order thinking, or get students to move to higher order thinking. Because when I look at all of this, I might then say, and I have to be specific now, how can VR be used to improve teaching based on what I see here? Or I might even be more specific and say, how can VR be used to improve attendance in classrooms? Because maybe, students might want to see technology in use in classrooms, and it encourages attendance. So this is where your prompts are going to change. So students essentially develop analysis, research, and identifying problem skills also, because sometimes, like I said, there will be incorrect citations. And if I just said to it, what is the impact of VR on education with citations, it's going to generate citations also. I could then, like I said earlier on, you could give it a concept and say, explain this for a 10-year-old. So it's going to do that. Now, I teach business process management. So I said, write the process for enrolling a student in a university course. It can't draw a mind map. It's going to give me the process. Is this the process that students necessarily do when they're enrolling in when they're enrolling? Not necessarily, because if we reflect on when we were enrolling, we went through a series of steps. So that's where students will then compare this response, evaluate what they actually did in practice, and generate a mind map. Okay, now let's focus on one more example. My prompt is, for a session on virtual reality, write a short synopsis of its use and limitations in education. It's probably tired now, given it too much. And I'm sure some of you would have heard it's possible to upgrade to a plus version, which costs $20 a month. So in fact, when the plus version came out, I actually laughed, because one of the things that they said when they were promoting it said the responses will be faster. I'm like, how much more fast is it going to be? So you see, it's writing a short synopsis of its use, of VR's use and limitation in education. Now, I'll let it do it, because it often gets cranky if I stop it. it's come to limitations, and I could improve. I could say write a short synopsis of its use and limitation in education, including citations. Citations, obviously, most of the times I've noticed it just makes up stuff. Develop a lesson plan to teach this to. Now my next prompt is develop a lesson plan to teach this to university undergraduate students. And Larry, this goes back to, can you use it to develop a lesson plan? So I think I'm just going to interrupt. It won't allow me. I could say stop generating. And I'm saying develop a lesson plan. Let's see, it gets cranky. Yep. So there you go. It started developing my lesson plan. Introduction to virtual reality in education, target audience, what the objective of the session is going to be, what materials are required, what the procedure is going to be, and it also provides details of the class activities and activities that you will do for this topic. So you see how useful it is. And remember, you have to keep playing with your prompts and adding more detail, because it depends on what you're looking for. So now I'm going to say, suggest some formative and summative assessments. And I've also said, okay, now let me just stop this for a sec. Cut this bit, cut. So now it's giving me some formative and summative assessments. Obviously, I can add, as an informed educator, I'm not going to take all of this as is, but remember, it's helping me in the process. So it's given me a list of, for formative assessment, it's saying class discussion, an exit ticket, a peer review. For summative, it's saying write a written reflection, presentation, and a research paper. Let's go a bit more further. I'm saying for the summative assessments, provide more detail and create the assessments. That says show. Here are some more detailed descriptions. Now it's telling me what the student should do in the written reflection. It's giving me a sample assessment. Anyone shocked? Yes or no in the chat screens, please. I'd love to see some yeses or no's in the chat screen. Just a Y or N quickly. You see the level of detail. It's given me now. I mean, I'm not reading. I'm going more. I'm saying to it, create a marking rubric for these 3 assessments with a weighting of 30%, 20%, and 50% respectively. So as you can see, it's got the criteria. It's divided it into excellent, good, fair, poor, because I've specified. And it's going to do this for all the 3 assessments. This is still, it's doing it for the 30%, which is written reflection. It started for the presentation now. Sorry, Mike, it is time, but let me, if it's okay, I'll take another 5 minutes. And sorry, people, I hope you're enjoying it, because the idea is that I really want you to start using it. And I can keep adding more details into it. I have a few other prompts, but I'll leave them for now. The other one and Mike, this is perhaps useful for us. I said to it, recommend a case study for an information system project at an undergraduate level. Because, people often keep saying, well, what project? So it's given a case study, developing an online ordering system for a local restaurant. And it's got the background, it's got your project goals. So you see, and look, the project can be customized based on our prompt. I didn't specify which industry, didn't specify the sector. I could have been more specific. So look, these were some, and someone was asking, can it generate code? Yes, so let me just write a quick one. Write code to convert kilometers to miles in Java. So there you go. Your code is generated. You just copy the code and bingo. It explains it also. So that's why I'm saying this really becomes an assistant for students, which I have no problem with. It's good to learn. They will actually leverage off the knowledge that you share in your classes and build upon it. So, and that's why I'm saying there's nothing wrong in it. We have to, the practice that we, or the exercises and activities that we do will actually be the most important thing going forward. So let me quickly share my screen again, slideshow from current slide. Mike, are you able to see the slide now? Good, awesome. So what next? Someone was asking about whether Turnitin is going to introduce similarity checking in its, it already does similarity checking. So yes, there are other tools, not just Turnitin. I've got, in fact, if you'd like, I'm quickly going to paste them in the chat screen. There's a few chat. Mike, if there's any questions for me in the chat, you just keep an eye out, please. I've posted ChatGPT 0, AI cheat check, which is by the company, and there is one that the company has made them, OpenAI has also made, which is called Platform OpenAI Text Classifier. However, when I tried these tools, they didn't pass the test. So in other words, they weren't able to detect the AI generated content. They said that content is human generated, which obviously means the tool needs to get better at it. Turnitin, I think in April, they will announce their AI detection tool, which is currently in testing. If you go to Turnitin's website, you'll find concerns about ChatGPT not being free for long, but even if they start charging, Bing will soon make it public, their beta version. And I think as educators, our own identification of AI generated work will only improve over time. And particularly given that, let's say you have a cohort of 10 students, and out of those 10, 5 went to ChatGPT and generated content from here, from ChatGPT. Usually there is a high level of similarity in ChatGPT's responses. When students plug their responses into Turnitin, Turnitin will straight away tell you the similarity. Now, the moment you see the similarity between those 5 students, you will know it's coming from some common source, which then becomes plagiarism. And then you can have a chat with them. And the other thing, we also have to be mindful of the copyright issues, because I was talking to a coder the other day and he said, well, I don't want to plug my code into ChatGPT, even if it's for testing, because ultimately it's intellectual property of the company that I work for. And I'm developing it for a company. He works as a consultant. So these are issues that we also should make our students aware of. So finally, we can't bury our heads in the sand and pretend that ChatGPT does not exist. Our focus has to be on creativity, critical thinking, and how to better use ChatGPT. There are many gray areas, such as copyright, who owns the data. We don't have control of information once we enter it into ChatGPT, so we have to be mindful of what we are feeding ChatGPT with. And I've already said, Turnitin will generate similarities when students start to use, especially if in the same cohort, same assessment, and ethics will become a greater issue. So I think it's a period of exploration and experimentation. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions, and that was pretty much it that I had to cover. These 2 images were again generated through DALL-E, the prompt that I used was generate a digital art depicting a chatbot and people using it for different purposes. So it gave me 4 options. I like these 2. I've got them on the screen there. Happy to take questions. I'm going to stop sharing and questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ritesh. We are a couple of minutes over time, so we won't do too many. There weren't a lot of questions anyway. Lots of wow and damn and oh my goodness and things like that. Nicola did ask about using this for English language, ESL. So how, we're testing the students on their writing. How do we use this? I don't know if I've got a great answer for Nicola there, except you maybe drag him in and make him right in front of you. I don't know if you've got any better ideas.
A good question, Nicola. In fact, I read an article somewhere last week where they're saying that places that teach English have actually started using it in their classrooms. And what they're doing is firstly, they get ChatGPT to generate content that has errors. Then they plug that into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to identify the errors and how to improve it. So the students then see the steps of how to improve it. Then in the classroom, you give them littered text again, and littered, I mean with errors, and then they improve it in the classroom. So that's one of the ways that I found, Nicola. But look, I think the summary really is students are going to be using it. So we have to find ways of dealing with it and using it. And coming back to your point about their ability to write essays, I gave you the example of Grammarly. Can we stop people from using AI Grammarly? Not really. So, I mean, the barrier to entry with Grammarly was the cost. Here, there is no barrier to entry.
Yeah, that's it. So there was that, and then Ashley talked about IP, but let's not get into IP. That's a whole separate discussion. We'll get you back for like an hour or somebody to talk about IP with ChatGPT separately. Apart from that, Ritesh, all mainly the other things in the chat are all thank yous and thank you so much. Interesting presentation, all of those kinds of things. And so I'm going to echo that as well to finish us off. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think the demos really floored people. That was a really good little touch. So thank you so much for that. We are running a few minutes ahead of time, ladies and gentlemen, behind time. So we will let you go. But yeah, thanks, Ritesh, so much for visiting us. Ladies and gentlemen, keep an eye out on the TELCoP mailing list for the recording of this presentation, which will appear soonish, and then also for an announcement of the next presentation, which will be in about 6 weeks or so. And we'll let you know who that is soon. We've already got an idea, but you'll find out in a little while. But apart from that, thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Ritesh. And we'll see everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Bye-bye. Cheers.